Hey guys, meteorologist Lindsey Slater here. So let's talk a little bit about, we had some auroras last night. I'm in southeast Wisconsin, so we did have some of those actually reach as far south as even my area. Northern Illinois saw some activity, even Connecticut as well. So this is due, and I did talk about this on a previous YouTube video that I did, I believe, on Friday the 12th. So it's now the 15th. I talked about this big coronal hole. If we look here at SDO, which is the Solar Dynamic Observatory from NASA. It's basically a satellite that's looking at the sun, looking at the sun's dynamics. We're looking here at the coronal hole, and it looks kind of like a butterfly or a heart. Now, on Friday, that hole was right around here. So it became Earth directed. It got into our view. And a coronal hole is basically the magnetic field lines of the sun, and they are open. So they are helping to push solar wind directed at Earth. This can cause our magnetic field to become disturbed, which creates storming. Now, just because you have a coronal hole, it can absolutely underperform. And a lot of our coronal holes before this have done that very thing. This one had the right polarity. So think of Earth's magnetic field like magnets. You can have magnets that, they kind of do this when you get really close together. That means the magnetic field or the poles are not aligned. They're, not north south. They're not what they should be to basically cause interactions with our magnetic field. In this case, this polarity of this solar wind coming out of the coronal hole was the correct kind. So it did create some storming for us, which did in fact bring us some of the beautiful auroras that we saw. Now, the latest on this, I believe that's right now, this is the positioning. And I'm going to go to Swipsy's page just to showcase for you. So by the way, that was 211 angstroms. So that was the wavelength we're looking at. But if you look, this is 195 angstroms. That hole is actually starting to move out of Earth's view. So it's going kind of back and around. So it's going on the western limb, and it's going to be going away from us. I am noticing a pretty active region right here. If you can see some of those flares happening. A really good way to look at the flares is if we look at the 131, and you can see right here, there's lots of flaring right there. There likely will be some more over here as well. And I'm also going to showcase 304. Now, this one does not show coronal holes very well. What it does do a good job of, I'm going to move this over so you guys can see. What it does do a wonderful job of doing is it is able to show us where we have prominences and filaments. And these are things that can lift off the sun and cause additional geomagnetic storming. So there's one right here, a very, very long one, kind of moving west to east here, pretty wild. And I almost see a little bit here and maybe a little bit right there as well. We could see some of that. A couple little filaments, I think, are launching right here, and maybe even right over there. Without seeing this in real time, actually down toward the bottom of the screen, you see that right there? That's pretty cool. Of a filament maybe lifting there. So yeah, these are the prominences. These are the filaments of plasma that lift off the sun. When we have a coronal mass ejection, that's a big chunk of plasma that comes off the sun, and that's what causes some big storming around here. I don't see any of that, but I do see a lot of the solar flaring going on. You can see it over here, some big brightness regions happening. And then if we look at sometimes if we look at combos of, you can see some of those beautiful arcades, which is caused again with those solar flares. That's just how the sun, it, without getting too technical, it has these beautiful arcs and arcades, and these are what would launch plasma coming out of the sun. It connects those sunspots together basically. So yeah, I am noticing the sunspots themselves, the regions, maybe right here is where I was kind of showing you guys. And then we have another one leaving the sun as well. So that's pretty interesting. A very active sun at the moment as we're still in the descending phase of our solar cycle. We did again have that aurora. We actually hit G3 category last night. Predicted as G2. So whether or not we can see auroras again, we may. It's not really cloudy for southeast Wisconsin. That is a possibility, but you can see we hit KP index of 6.6 last night. So that was pretty high. I saw at one point a predicted of almost 8 as well. The magnetometers were going bonkers last night. I can actually show you right here. The storm index was getting pretty into strong to moderate storm category. And then you can see the disturbed magnetometers going crazy. This happening, it looks like this kind of peaked about 8, 9 p.m. I wish I was awake so I could have warned you that we had this potential of some aurora borealis or some northern lights. I was not awake, so I was not able to give everybody the heads up. When it comes to high speed streams, which come out of these coronal holes, which we have here, when you have a coronal hole, there's, I don't want to say there's not as much of a heads up, but we know there's a huge coronal hole. It has to be the right polarity, and if the right polarity happens, boom, you can get some good looking auroras as long as there's the right storming. But it's a little bit different than when you have like a coronal mass ejection that launches plasma toward the sun. We usually have a 3-day heads up on that. Again, the polarity has to be correct in order for us to see storming. So that is your update on space weather. Feel free to follow me. I also do a weather forecast too if you're interested in that. Again, that's specifically for Southeast Wisconsin.